The 4 buying confidences which need addressing. Buyers want to be confident that they will be successful if they purchase and implement your product or service. Now, as a marketer, you can help speed up cycles and provide higher quality marketing qualified leads if you address these confidence issues in your content. So, the goal is to become buyer-centric and position everything you put out so that every touch point is helping address the issues which need to be tackled before a purchase decision can be made in your favor. Well-educated clients who are confident in your offering even before speaking with sales is the ultimate benchmark of marketing excellence. So this week on the show, we'll get a complete appreciation for what those buying confidences are, why they're important, and how you can deal with them. Hello and good afternoon. My name's James Rostance and this is the 414 live this Thursday afternoon, the 1st of July. There we go. It's for you as a professional B2B marketer, for you to directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge with every single episode. And we do that by speaking with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing every single week so that you can do just that. And it's also, by the way, for company executives with a hands-on role in your company's sales and marketing activities. Nearly forgot that one. So if you haven't already, by the way, please do subscribe to the the414.net. The 414.net is when you can sign up so you never miss an episode in the future and where you can check out all previous episodes. This week it's number 87 and we're going to cross now live to Boston, Massachusetts, where Mr. David Kirkdorffer is waiting and standing by. Good morning for you, good afternoon from us, David.
Hello, James. Hello, everyone.
Rock and roll. There we go. So, buying confidences is the topic of the day today. And darn curious one at that, because of the potential power and awesomeness it stands to give marketers who implement what you've put an awful lot of thought and attention to. With that, I guess the question that I need to get covered first of all is, what exactly are buying confidences?
Sure. So in our daily lives, where as consumers or as professionals working in our businesses, we're faced with situations where we need to make purchases. And as we make these purchases, we want to be confident of success. So Brent Adamson at CEB Research has outlined a few ideas that I believe I've kind of added some extra color to and some detail that's practical for our marketers and sales folks to follow and to leverage as we build our marketing and sales practices.
And so why are these buying confidences important? And with that, what's the motivation for addressing them?
Sure. Well, the motivation for addressing them is to try and simplify the buyer's process, right? Buyers are overwhelmed with information, and if you can be a source to help buyers make sense of the options and the variations and the variables that are being presented to them, you are helping them be more confident. If you become that trusted source, they can have more faith in what they're doing and progress and make that purchase. Where a buyer has doubts, where buyers feel as if there are still unanswered questions, where they feel as if they won't be successful ultimately, it's either adopting the solution or extracting value from their various solutions, they hold back. And so sales cycles stall to no decision.
Which is always a bad thing, to say the least. Yeah. Well, could you take us through then in detail could you take us through in detail what the different buying confidences are?
Sure, absolutely. So they start at the highest level. We're asking ourselves, is this the right category of solution to be looking at to solve our situation, to address our context, to address our situation, right? And at that topmost level, we're asking the question, Because there are so many choices available today. In the marketing technology space alone, for example, there are over 8,000 different MarTech solutions available. So a VP of marketing or a CMO can quite legitimately ask, are we even looking at the right types, the right categories of solution to address our issue? So that becomes the first question. The next question after that becomes, okay, well, within that category, who are the right vendors that we ought to be considering? So in some markets, depending on what technology or in what you're purchasing, there are analysts who put together documents that kind of outline who the leaders are. In the technology space, we might talk about a Gartner Magic Quadrant or a Forrester Wave. And those types of summary reports try to inform us who the leaders are within the space, within the category, I should say. And they also, of course, try to caveat and say, just because someone's up in the upper right corner doesn't mean they're the right fit for you. Which brings us to the third question then. Of these vendors, which ones would we be successful to digest at our company, right? Every company is a little different. You've got different backgrounds, different technology environments, different processes, different people. And so the third question you ask is, would we be successful digesting this solution into our world? After all, we don't want to spend a lot of time and money buying something to have it then fail when we try to implement it. So it's important to us that we have a certain amount of confidence before we even get going that we would be successful with this vendor's solution. And then the last confidence is, of course, the money question, right? Is there going to be a return? How do we measure it? What exactly are the measures of success, and how can we achieve them? What scale of success might this purchase bring to us? So the fourth question we ask is, will we derive an economic or a value benefit? And we do this literally for all of our purchases, whether we're trying to buy a car. Recently, I was buying a guitar amplifier. I went through kind of some of the same questions myself. And in our personal lives, we do it so quickly, we may not even realize that we are kind of answering these questions along the way. So hopefully that helps outline what these 4 questions are and some of their impact.
It does, right. So from the top, right there in brief form, the 4 questions as a recap are, go.
Number 1, what is the right category of solution that we should be looking at?
Yep.
Number 2, in this category, who are the right vendors for us to be considering? Number 3, would we be successful implementing, digesting, adopting, rolling out these vendors? Which of these vendors would we be most successful doing those things with? And then finally, how do we measure success, and what level of success financially or process-wise, perhaps it's a compliance or a security measure, are we able to achieve, so that the undertaking of making this change and adopting is worth it? If it's not worth it, we tend to stall again. And so that's the final ultimate measure.
Nice. Well, now that we've got the confidences nicely mapped out and we understand what they are, what is it exactly that marketing as a department can actually do to help foster buying confidence?
Sure. So that's a great question. So we know that the buyer's journey is a nice framework that we try to attach to a process that buyers are going through. And increasingly, people are starting to talk about what we call the dark funnel. This is the activity set that goes on that's somewhat invisible to marketing and happens before we as vendors are contacted. So our customers or our prospects reveal themselves on our website, perhaps. Perhaps if we're going back to trade shows, they might reveal themselves. But before they actually reveal themselves, they're doing research themselves. And so the availability of content that you might provide to help answer some of these questions, so that you are informing your buyer, your prospect, of what the issues are. You are educating a little bit, and you're trying to share your opinions and your thoughts in a way that is helpful to the buyer, in a way that they can trust. And so I'll stop there and take another question, but there's a lot we can unpackage in just what I've said there.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I guess the follow-on from that is indeed, what conversely can sales do in terms of helping address these buying confidences? Although I'm
Sure.
mindful that it's marketing that's producing this content, so
So
I'll
we
throw
can
it out
walk
there.
through some of the content that could be created by our marketing teams, for example, and maybe that helps unpackage a bit of the first question more for you. Um,
Yes.
all right. And return then to the sales questions. So on the marketing side, um, the types of content that perhaps could be created to answer the first question, is this the right category of solution to be considered, would be vendor neutral information that actually articulates what the category is. Uh, that's quite helpful to a buyer. That's why they go to analyst firms to try and understand the category. However, depending on your business, you may not have an analyst firm that does that type of coverage, or there may not be a document that kind of sums it up for you. So if you decide that you're going to evangelize your own category, you do a couple of beneficial things to your overall marketing by taking this evangelistic point of view. You're educating, you're standing above it all, explaining the benefits of the category, explaining what the category is and isn't. By doing so, you are placing yourself within a category and helping explain, excuse me, and inform your audience, your prospects, what category you are actually in. And again, if there's 8,000 MarTech solutions out there, it's helpful to have that kind of whittled down a little bit. This is who we are. That'll make a big difference in the type of prospects that come to your website, right? And if you do this honestly in this evangelistic mode, you are enhancing your brand's reputation. If you are a trustworthy source of information, you are um, becoming an expert in that category and, in a way, positioning yourself as a leader within that category, even if you have a smaller market share than some of your larger competitors, because you're taking on this role of trying to help educate and help the buyer make sense of it all, which is exactly what the buyer is trying to figure out. They're trying to make sense of it all. They're overwhelmed with information. So these third-party reports, information that is devoid of any brand kind of pitching, is sought after by buyers. And indeed, that's often why demand gen marketers might use analyst reports, because people who are interested in those reports are interesting to the organization that's making the sale. So that's the first piece of content. I can stop there, or we can kind of dive in deeper if you'd like to the other ones.
I think they absolutely do need diving into, but
Okay.
I do appreciate that approach because, well, you're, as you said, giving the potential customers what they need right then and there. They're not after a pitch per se, but they're looking to, I guess. They're going on a journey to ultimately become educated and informed buyers, because really that's what people want to do. Because in B2B, we do have to make good decisions. Not that you necessarily get fired for a bad decision, but there's typically a good bit riding on it, isn't there? So yes, I love that. That's perfectly in line with what the buyers are after. So, all right, well, to dig a bit deeper then, what is the other type of content that
Sure.
you
So
can be
again,
producing?
perhaps at a high level, remembering and riffing off of what you just said, it's
Yeah.
about having buyer empathy. It's about providing information. What does the buyer want to know, rather than talking about our stuff, our way. And as I come from the technology marketing space, there's a lot of technology that wants to talk about itself. A lot of clients and a lot of engineering type of organizations want to talk about itself and what we can do and so forth. And that can be helpful, but it gets to a point where it's not actually empathetic to the buyer. It's in the wrong question. Okay, so question number two, right? In this category, is this the right vendor for us? So there's a lot of there's a lot of information that can be provided there. Case studies, right? Case studies are interesting because they actually come up in a number of different ways, because they provide a sense of empathy. If that company can do it, then maybe we can do it too. The story of the purchase is important. Various explainer videos that you might create that talk about how your solution works a little bit. Various customer reviews, if they exist in your industry. In the technology space, there are review sites, Gartner peer-to-peer, Trust Radius, Capterra, G2. Those are places where buyers will go. So having your content be present there is helpful as well. Various integrations that may exist, right? So when we ask the question, the second question, is this the right vendor for us? And we've got a particular technology stack that we use in our organization, and we see that 4 of the vendors that could be in consideration don't integrate with some elements of that technology stack, that separates them out from the other ones who do. So we're asking the question, is this the right technology? Is this the right vendor for us? If it doesn't integrate, then it's probably not. Move on. Next, we're asking, okay, so would we be successful to digest this solution? Okay, so again, I'm coming from the tech space, and so some of that has to do with diagnostics, right? Can we diagnose or identify which systems and people and processes before purchasing that are going to be impacted? Give me some foresight. Unwrap the mystery a little bit. Help me feel more confident that oh yes, we can do that. That's not a problem. All right. Help me quantify the level of impact if you can, right? Is it going to be large, medium, or small levels of impact? Can you provide installation guides so that people can know beforehand what it might take to deploy and roll out some of your technology? Adoption guides are helpful, so that you can have, so as a reader, as a buyer, you can say, yes, we can do that. We're forearmed. We know what it's going to take now. And as we consider different options from different vendors, what's interesting is when some vendors provide this information and others don't, which vendor are you more likely to be interested in?
Yeah.
Right. And the last question is then, are we going to extract value? So that's where ROI calculators come in, or time process studies, depending on the kind of solution you're involved with. Again, case studies are interesting because many times in case studies, the benefit of all the work is made clear. Or the pricing, obviously, is important, and that could come in question number 3 as well. Can we afford this solution? Some solutions are more affordable than others.
So would you say that these are buying objections, or have you got another way of framing these? Because it feels like these, if you're tackling these in advance, you're kind of neutralizing them. There you go. Before they come up.
That's a great way of looking at it in some ways, right? So let's imagine now you're wearing your sales hat, right? Okay, so I have a sales hat, perhaps. You're wearing your sales hat. Okay, so we've got a sales hat, right?
Literal sales hat.
And now you're a sales rep. Okay, so your buyer isn't going to be buying if they're not confident. Because, and the confidence we're talking about is confidence in their success. If they're not confident that they're going to be successful, they will stall to no decision. They will say things to you like, well, it's just not the right time, or we're not quite ready for it, or there's other priorities, we've got to kind of work on that, right? And those can all be legitimate. But we've heard those situations, and what's happened is that the customer has lost confidence that they're going to be successful. It's not worth the upheaval to go about all this process because we don't believe the benefit in the end is going to be there for us in some capacity. All right. So what can you do? Well, you want to uncover that doubt in your buying cycles, perhaps. And this is what the best sales reps do, is in their conversations, they're kind of fishing for where those doubts are. And if you haven't built it into your process, then you probably do. You probably should, right? When I have interactions with my bank, they ask me after every interaction, how was it, right? I'm being polled in a customer service kind of way. What was the thought? They're trying to uncover where things could be done better. What if you were to do something similar after some of your sales interactions? You might ask questions like, what level of confidence do you have that you would be successful based on everything that you know now, right? You could put together a body of information pretty quickly to evaluate your current pipeline to see what's real and what's not. So fishing to understand where there are doubts is important. By providing this content up front, you're helping be transparent, which is important. And another aspect, perhaps kind of jumping in a slightly different direction, is when you provide this information up front available freely from your website, your buyers self-select. And when your buyers self-select, because they say, oh, I think we could be successful with this. Yeah, looks like we could adopt that. Integrates with what we've got. They've already answered many of those types of objection questions. And so those buyers who request a demo from your website who request to talk to you in a sales conversation or ask for more detailed pricing because you've provided perhaps only limited pricing. Those self-selected customers are the customers who you will find close more often. They are the prospects that move through the pipeline more quickly, and they are the prospects that need less price discounting because they have more confidence that they will be successful, therefore perceive less risk. So by providing this type of information freely, you're helping steer your if you will, intake of leads, if you still use that word, towards success.
Yes, I love that you touched on risk there as an influential point. So by tackling these, you're giving them confidence. The byproduct of that then is that they feel less risk, and therefore they don't need to offset that against, for example, paying less money or reducing the cost. Have I got that correct?
That's the idea, absolutely. And of course, if your buyers are more confident and move through the buying cycle more quickly, your cost of sale goes down as well, right? So, and that's a rather important consideration to take in mind as well. The more you have to prove things to them, the more time it takes, the more expertise, the more hand holding. And of course, every product is different. Every solution is different. So there shouldn't, we shouldn't think of a one size fits all. But in your, as you're listening to this and you're considering your business, the question becomes to maybe ask yourself would be, how can I be more empathetic to a buyer's perspective? What is it that they are asking that they want to know? They're asking these questions in sales cycles. Can you provide more of this information upfront and more freely available? And perhaps can you maybe think about reorganizing your website in a way that makes it easier to find this content so that the buyer doesn't have to wade through. When I go to a website, I want to understand what they do, and then I'm trying to say, well, is this going to be good for me? And I dive in deeper, right? Okay, This is one of those vendors I think I'm going to look at, and if the vendor has divided up their resources pull down menu by podcasts, webcasts, white papers, case studies, I'm like, well, you've organized the information you have by media type. That's not very helpful to me. I have to go through all these different things to try and find these different answers to these different questions. Is there another way? If you're going to do that by media type, help label within the content itself what it is that I should be getting. Again, thinking in terms of empathy of the buyer, what questions do they have? How are we addressing this within the content we create? And if you're a content manager, if you're a CMO, you might want to do an audit of your content that you have on your website or make available in the sales cycle and say, okay, we've got a lot of content in answering question 1, but we've got nothing for question 3 because we think that's sales enablement. And it's like, well, it's not sales enablement. It's buyer enablement. Let me underline the point. I worked for a company that sold technology via AWS. When you purchase technology via AWS, you don't talk to the vendor. You buy it strictly through AWS. It's a technology sale. It's not a small purchase price. Some of these purchases are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you rely on the documentation that is available. And that documentation is answering that third question. Would we be successful digesting this technology into our environment, right? Would we be successful rolling it out with our processes and our people? So marketing can have a very strong message or my message to marketing is you have a very strong case to be producing content that is often thought of as sales enablement. And if you were to think of it as more buyer enablement, perhaps it's something that you can own and participate and partner with sales to provide.
I can see how switching it to you coined the term buyer enablement just then, right? Yeah.
That's right, yes.
How, if you approach it from a buyer enablement perspective, that feels like you'd be more inclined to create good or better content. That's just what sprung to mind then when you said that. So you're not trying to pitch people on what's great about your thing. You're then focused on helping them with their journey and helping them along to make, all being well, a decision in your favour. That's
Well,
a solid concept.
absolutely. Ultimately, because there's so much information, and for complex products, the information can be complicated. The challenge a buyer has is trying to make sense of it all. And the more, and successful sales reps will know this, successful sales reps are helping their buyers make sense of all of this information, perhaps even using information provided by other vendors and as a great way of explaining a process or a concept or an idea. And you're trying to make sense of it so that the buyer feels confident that they understand it, right? The point you raised about objections, in our sales and marketing process, when it's a question being asked by a prospect, it's an objection, right? From a prospect's point of view, it's a question they're trying to get an answer to, that they don't have a confidence about, if you will. And maybe I'm being a bit, generous with the usage of the word, but what they have is a doubt. The doubt exists because of any number of reasons. We think of it as an objection because it's a step that's in the way of saying yes to purchase. They're objecting to the purchase. But really, if we can turn it around and say, it's really all about having a confidence that it's going to be a good idea. Another reason to do this and to help buyers have confidence isn't just in the sales cycle, but then after the sales cycle. Many businesses nowadays talk about annual recurring revenue. So we're very concerned with customers being satisfied and happy with their experience, with the solutions that we're offering during the course of their contract period, if it's a SaaS product or a service or something. So they're feeling confident that they extract value is key. It comes up in the purchase process because that's where the buyer is saying, is it going to be worth it? How do I measure worth itness, if I can make up that word, right? And what scale of worth itness, thank you, I appreciate that. Right? What scale of worth itness am I going to get? Is it going to be worth it enough? Because the upheaval to purchase something is pretty great, especially in smaller companies, right? Smaller companies very often just hobble along with what they've got, not because they want to hobble along with what they've got. It's more that it's working, it's not broken. I've got so many things to do. I can't concentrate on fixing everything. I choose my battles. And if the upheaval of putting in the new thing is more trouble than it's worth, I won't do it unless I need to, right? So I might be struggling, but I'm getting by. And that's always the big challenge for a seller, is to find, some kind of compelling reason to move beyond the status quo. So I'll stop.
I loved how this reframe of looking at it from a buyer's perspective means that, it's then no longer an objection because, as you said, if your focus is on getting the buyer to sign the dotted line and for you to get a sale, then that's in the way of you getting the sale. But if you're if you're putting yourself in the customer's shoes, that all changes. And yes, I can see this all links back wonderfully to the whole concept of it's all to do with the buyer having confidence that your product or service is what they need, and factoring in what you've also just covered about whether it's worth the effort. That's I actually think that's an equally important step to highlight because, well, these things, as you say, do take time. And if the juice is not worth the squeeze, there we go for an expression, then you're not going to do it. So what you're advocating is that marketers need to make it quite clear and work to get across that indeed the juice is worth the proverbial squeeze on that one.
Exactly right. So a buyer will never buy if they're not confident of their success. So we as marketers provide information to inform, to educate, maybe to be entertaining, right? That's if insurance companies can make funny ads, then anyone can, is the way I say it. And this information that we share is helping people ultimately feel as if I'll be like them they are successful, I can be successful too, right? So in all sorts of consumer marketing leverages personalities and so forth. A lot of consumer marketing ideas are increasingly appropriate in B2B marketing too. That's why the power of case studies is so important, because it's a story, and it's a story that
Mm.
says success. This company had a situation, they did this, they found success. And so case studies are powerful that way. And one aspect of a great case study from a buyer's perspective is not just the measurements of success, the metrics, which of course are important, right? The percentage of this improvement or the dollar savings in that way and so forth, but also the implementation process. They're very curious to know, what did it take to get it rolled out? What were some of the steps? Who were the groups involved? How long did it take? Who was their customer service provided and so forth? And when that's not provided by the vendor in the case study, then the purchaser goes to those review sites like
Yeah.
the Capterras, the G2s, the Trust Radiuses, the Gartner peer-to-peer, and so forth in the technology space. And indeed, if there are others for other industries, I'm just not familiar with them. But when they go through those sources and they're reading the words from the other customers, they're searching for clues to kind of remove some of the mystery that is there on what will it take to be successful to implement this. Famously, for people of a certain age, you might remember when CRM systems were first being rolled out in large enterprises. Um, the famous statistic was like 50% of them fail within the first 6 weeks. They took years
Good
to
God.
create, right? And so nobody wants to be the person who's behind a purchase that seemed like a great idea, but in the end, they couldn't make it work at their company, right? Um, and that's the risk, that's the fear. So um, it is about buyer confidence. It's about helping tell a story in the different ways that a customer kind of breaks up their questioning, those 4 questions, I guess, right? Is this the right um, category that we should be considering? There are many types of solutions. There are many ways to solve it within this category. Then who are the vendors that we should be considering for us? Of these vendors, question number 3 is, which ones might we be successful adopting, digesting, rolling out? And then finally, of which of these vendors, how are we going to measure our success? What is success? What does it look like? And how much of it are we going to get after we've made this purchase? Is it worth it? Is it worth the upheaval of ripping out the old thing to put in the new thing, changing our process, retraining our employees? There's all sorts of upheaval that can come with some of these changes.
I wasn't familiar with the concept that CRM systems before they were cloud-based, I guess, would be such a potential minefield. And no, yeah, I can well imagine you would not want to be the person responsible for having made that duff decision, which cost a lot of money and screwed a lot of things up. That's got to be bad.
It's true. Many of those first CRM systems might have been homegrown, right? So leveraging an internal data warehouse that might have existed. But those types of days are behind us, if you will. There's the famous expression in sales that used to exist. I don't think it's pertinent today, but you'd say you don't get fired if you buy IBM, because
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
end, right? Of course. So what is that? That's a confidence question again, isn't it? That's buyers essentially saying my risk level is lower if I go with vendor X, who is a leader in the category, and if these other guys can do it, then I probably can do it too, right? Um, in the technology space, um, capabilities that once $1 million a year for Bank of America to provide for its direct marketing capabilities to its marketing team are now at the fingertips of your average sales development rep, your teleprospector, if you will. They have the same capabilities that 20 years ago Bank of America paid $1 million a year for. Now it's available through technology today, and that evolution is based on success that with tech. Well, I'm going off on a tangent. Let's stop there.
It's a really good point. Yeah. So what, for £50 a month, or however much that is in dollars, 70, right? £50 a month, you can have, yeah, what's they would have previously done for 100,000 a month, which
That's
is
right. And if you're a sales rep for that technology, the more confidence you feel that your customer is going to be successful, and the more you can prove it, the less you feel as if you need to discount, right? Which is where we come back to that side of the story again. Again, so.
So what would be some of your favourite examples of these buying confidence issues being successfully addressed, and the results that come from that?
So that's a great question. It's a pretty deep question because I don't see any one vendor kind of going through and thinking of it all the way through like this, at least as it's manifested in the world today, right? Which isn't to be unfair to vendors. Perhaps it's there and I'm just not seeing it quite so well. I don't see websites organized in a way to help answer these questions on a regular basis. And no one's coming to mind right now. What I do see is websites that organize information by media type. Um, when it's a technology sale to technologists, there is a lot more information made available because that buyer type likes to make decisions, him or herself, right? They don't want to interact with sales people per se. Product-led growth companies are aiming to answer these confidence questions by allowing trials of their technology so that you can put it on yourself, get a feel for it. Once you say, oh, I like this, it's actually working, it does the job. But we won't do a trial or we won't do a demo unless we think it's worth it. And we have to feel it's worth it. So how do we learn about that? Well, perhaps it's reputation. Someone's a leader in their space, or everybody else is using vendor X. Let me try it too and see if it works for me too. That can be very powerful, right? In a way, that's answering the confidence, would I be successful question, because everybody else has done it. I probably could do too. That's why we go with the leading brands. But technology solutions and product-led growth technology solutions in particular are, I guess, the best examples of addressing this, though they may not think of what they're doing is trying to address these four confidence questions. They're getting at it, and they're providing the answers, at least successfully enough to be growing. If they're product-led growth and they're not growing, right? If they're aiming to be product-led growth, if that's their go-to-market plan, and they're not seeing growth, so you ask, what's the challenge? What's the problem? Perhaps they're not getting enough interest. Perhaps there isn't enough confidence that it's worth it. We don't all start out as market leaders, right? We kind of crawl our way there. We fight our way there. We work towards it. So until we're that market leader and we can benefit from that brand preceding us, we have to try harder, as famously a car rental company said that they would do. And we have to answer the questions that the buyer has in their mind. We have to have more empathy for the buyer's perspective toward their success.
With you. Now would probably be a good time actually to just point out that before we started the show today, you did actually put in quite nicely the link to be able to download these all important buyer questions under the video feed. So if you have a look in the I guess the comment section underneath the video right now, you can click and download these wonderful questions that David is saying that, look, you need to address these and ultimately to develop buyer confidence. And and if you're listening as well, then these will be in the show notes as well. That's the word. So yeah, it'll be in the show notes, the downloadable, and on the video on whatever platform you're watching right now, you can click to download that. So with that said, what would you say? What would you say to someone to empower them to get buy-in for this as a concept amongst their team to pick this up and run with it?
Understand that this has got implications that are somewhat soft implications, but rather important ones in how you approach your marketing and your selling. I write about this on LinkedIn quite a bit. I've got some links to a number of posts that you can find easily, and content around this topic. Um, what I'd say is, if you're trying to bring this to your manager and say, "Oh, we need to do something more like this," recognize that it's not like you can just wave a magic wand and, oh, I've done it. It's a progressive process. It's a buying into an idea and the idea is to be more empathetic to the customer or prospects needs and points of view. Where are they coming from? With that empathy, with that understanding, with that desire to help customers make sense of it all, to remove mystery, you then make your own shift, and you start to intrinsically try and provide content that is helpful. You intrinsically maybe elevate your case studies to include more about what your customers want, or you perceive or understand. A great way to go about this is to talk to your customers and prospects and say, what was interesting and helpful? What did we do that was really helpful to you? Was there a breakthrough moment? When did it come? Was there a particular piece of content that helps you? Um, Perhaps in a direct survey, perhaps in your after sales cycle win-loss kind of conversation, which is very vital. I suggest you adopt that. So hopefully that helps. Again, there's no one simple answer. I wish there were. It's more of a
Yeah,
mindset shift. And once
sure.
you see it through a mind shift, once you've made the mind shift, then you're incepted, if you will, and it will be difficult for you to not work towards these questions and answering them.
Beautiful use of the concept of inception right there. I can see Leonardo DiCaprio and his team running into the to help with that right now.
I'm spinning my top. This is the real world.
Nice. Well, in that case, this does then bring me to my final question, which is always, what would be the big takeaway that you would like everyone to have from this on what you've shared today on addressing buying confidences?
Sure. Buyers will not buy unless they are confident of a certain amount of success to make it worth their while. So if they have doubts, they will hold back. You will see that in your sales cycles taking longer. You will see that in sales cycles um, failing to no decision, right? So what can we do? The point is to try and answer questions that buyers have along the way throughout the journey, if you will, to simplify their world, to have empathy for their world, their buying process, where the confusions can exist, because there are so many choices and they're overwhelmed with information. And a lot of the information is just really not answering their core questions. Those four questions again, right? So is this the right category of solution for us? Within this category, who are the vendors we ought to be considering for us? Um, of these vendors, which ones would we be successful digesting, rolling out, adopting, integrating, whatever the right type of word is? I use digesting as a bit of a catch-all. And then finally, from these vendors, which ones will we be able to see economic benefit from? The price ratio to benefit is clear. They've made a good case and we can understand it. This empathy, this helping customers make sense of it, will advance your sales cycles. They will move more quickly. You'll have more of your customers self-selecting if this type of information is freely made available to your prospects. And by that, I mean without a paywall or a gate of some kind. The more the prospect feels that they're going to be confident of their success, the more likely they are to ask for a demo, the more likely they are to ask for a sales conference or a customer. And those folks have self-selected and will move through your sales cycle more successfully.
Nice. That was beautifully summarized right there, and also making the case quite wonderfully for why this is a good thing. So yeah, just to really highlight on that, I love that. You've got to get this the confidences addressed properly in order for them to move to the next step, be that the trial, the requesting the consultation, whatever it is. But they won't necessarily do that. Well, they might, but you're stacking the odds hugely in your favor if we follow your advice and guidance on this. Perfect.
That's right. As a marketer, you can't hope to provide a prospect 100% confidence in their success on these ideas. What you can do is provide enough information for buyers to say, I know enough that I think it's worth it. I will contact these folks, right? I will reveal myself to them. And so you're trying to move the dial from I have no confidence to enough confidence to make it worth, let's have a conversation. When you're in the sales cycle, then you're trying to remove all the remaining other doubts. And a buyer is okay with that, right? They don't expect to be 100% confidence necessarily before they talk to someone. They just need to be confident enough that it's worth it.
Yeah. Perfect. Worth it is the real thing that was jumped out at me right then in terms of reasons for doing this. Perfect. Well, I guess before we go, what is the best way for people to get in contact and connect with you? I think that's a really important point to do right now.
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm fairly visible there. I believe I'm perhaps the only David Kirkdorffer on the planet.
So there you go. Name's on screen now. Yes.
There we go. Right. So that's the great way to reach me there. I can be happy to have conversations one-on-one if that's a useful way to continue. I write about these types of topics periodically as well.
Perfect. There we go. So, David Kirkdorffer, live from Boston in Massachusetts on the East Coast. There we go. Thank you ever so much for joining me. Yes, I always like to make sure I get the left and the right. Right. So yes, East Coast of the United States this afternoon, this morning where you are. Well, look, thank you ever so much for joining me. And this has been sincerely valuable. Thank you, David.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share some ideas.
It's been awesome. And if you've enjoyed watching as well as I really hope you have done, then please do subscribe to the show. 414.net is where you can subscribe by email to make sure that you never miss an episode in the future, as well as check out all previous episodes. This today has been yet another nice dive into an area where, all being well, you as a professional B2B marketer can make a real difference in your role and in turn, the results that you deliver for your company as a whole. So there we go. Mr. David Kirkdorffer, thank you ever so much for today. And there we go. This has been the 414 Live, insights and wisdom from the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing with myself, James Rostance, here every week. In the meantime, I'll see you here same time next week.